Hi everyone, today we are going to go over how to do a close read when working with a poem. Today we are going to be following the SLAM method that was presented to you in Lesson 1 of the Poetry Unit. As we already know, SLAM stands for structure, language, affect, and meaning. Now, how we are going to work with this together is we are going to go through this poem here, I Wandered as Lonely as a Cloud, then we are going to break it down into each of its specific elements. So first, let's read it together. I wandered as lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretch in a never-ending line along the margins of a bay. 10,000 I saw at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not be gay in such jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the shrew to me had brought. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. All right, so one of the very first things that we need to be looking at is the structure of the poem. When we're dealing with the structure, one of the most important elements is looking at the rhyme scheme. So I'm going to scroll down, and I've broken the poem into specific sections. When we are working with a poem like this, it can be quite long and it can be quite daunting. One of the first things to do is to chunk the poem into specific sections that will make it a little bit more manageable for you. Because this poem already has distinct stanzas, I've decided to just follow the stanza breaks that they have. So when we are working with the rhyme scheme, you're always going to look at the last word of each line. Based on that will determine which lines rhyme. We know that cloud and hills, they don't rhyme. However, cloud and crowd, those two lines rhyme. So as you can see, I've put an A at the end of each line. This A really just demonstrates that those two lines rhyme, and there's no other ones that do. When we look at the second line, that floats on high o'er vales and hills, I've given this one a B. This line does not rhyme with cloud or crowd. However, hills rhymes with daffodils. And so as you can see, I've put a B behind hills and I've put a B behind daffodils. And finally, I've used C on the last two lines. Again, these two lines rhyme because we are dealing with trees and breeze. Trees and breeze do not rhyme with either daffodils or crowds. Therefore, they have to have their own distinct letter. Perfect. We've dealt with the structure. The next thing that we're going to look at is we're going to look at the language that is used within the poem. Again, breaking it down into each specific stanza. As I read this stanza, there were a couple of words that I didn't know the meaning to. So what I did is I underlined the word, and then I went and I found the definition of it in the dictionary, okay? And I just put the synonym or the definition directly above it so that I could reference it later if I needed to. The next thing that we're going to have a look at when we're dealing with language is the figurative language that is used in the poem. As we can see, I wandered as lonely as a cloud. This is a direct simile, and we know a simile is using a direct comparison using like or as. And we can see that very clearly it has an as in here. So what I've done is I've identified the figurative language that is used, and I've talked about what they are comparing. So in this poem, the poet is comparing the way the speaker walks to the movement of a cloud. Now we know that a cloud moves aimlessly, it doesn't have a direction, it doesn't have a destination, and it doesn't stop when it gets to a specific destination. And so it alludes to how the speaker moves. Finally, we also have an example of personification. Personification is giving humanistic qualities to something that isn't considered a human. And so here, we're really seeing how the daffodils, even though it's not identified directly in this line, we are talking about how the daffodils are dancing in the breeze. Now, daffodils themselves can't dance. They're not doing pirouettes or anything like that in the middle of the field, but we can identify and we can imagine that they are probably moving very gracefully and very gently in the breeze. And we know it would be graceful or gently because there's nothing in this stanza that tells us that there are storm clouds coming or that the wind is particularly strong. Now that segue leads us perfectly into the affect. Okay, how does this poem affect us? Now when we're looking at this specific stanza, like I mentioned, it doesn't give any sort of allusion or any sort of mention to the fact that this is a big storm cloud that's coming in, or it's rather ominous or anything like that. But we really do get the impression that it is a calm, clear day. The daffodils are gently blowing in the breeze. And so we take our time as we read it. It doesn't tell us that where the punctuation is. It doesn't tell us that we need to read the poem quickly. Finally, one of my most favorite parts of doing a close read with poetry is doing the paraphrase. Now, the paraphrase, when we are paraphrasing something, it means that we are using different words to help you achieve a better understanding of what's going on in the stanza. All right, and this is where it's really important to look at each chunk specifically. All right, so I've just kind of paraphrased what this stanza is about. The poem begins with the speaker walking aimlessly somewhere outside. We have no idea where he is, but we can imagine that he's probably in a field or maybe he's in a park, but he comes across many daffodils moving beautifully beside a lake, and he compares their movement to dance. So basically, what we've just done here is we've taken this stanza and we've just broken it down so that we have a better understanding of what the poet is talking about. Once you're done this for the first section, I used stanzas. Again, you can chunk it however you choose, but you're going to follow this pattern throughout the course of the poem. You're going to follow the structure, the language, the affect, and the meaning. How does each section make you feel? How does that impact your overall understanding? As always, if you have any additional questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to your instructor. Good luck, everyone.